All right, this is Sense, and with my review of Onward, which I saw yesterday. I had to wait to get a better audio setup, so, hopefully you can tell a little bit of a difference here. I really enjoyed it. I feel like, Pixar, even with some of their lesser known hits and stuff, I will be honest, I haven't seen every single Pixar movie that exists. But, from their very strong early movies with, Toy Story and Incredibles and stuff like that, I know that's kind of a range I just gave you there, but at a time range, I feel like all their movies were pretty much perfect. And then some of their newer ones were, they were not as clear. There's stuff like Cars 2 and everything where I still enjoyed them, but I do not specifically think they were that strong, really, of movies in terms of what their message was and what the idea and theme behind it was, which is really what I'm going to have to focus on with this one. Is it very much feels like with Inside Out, Onward also feels like the person who made it had like a specific in background, a specific feeling, a specific moment they remember that they wanted to recapture and say something about. That's what Onward feels like. Just the same with Inside Out. Maybe it wasn't, the exact same situation as traveling to a different state, or as this one, we got elves and everything. It's not, obviously not exactly, it may not exactly be dealing with an older brother and a mom with a dead parent. Dead dad, it could be a dead mom, it could be some other situation, but it just feels like it's from this movie feels like a very personal journey to the writer, and I guess director, because animated movies work that way. But I have to say it very much stood out. I'm not someone who usually tears up or gets too sad at movies, but this one definitely, once we started getting to the finale and I started really feeling the emotion of it. And that's the other thing of this movie is, typically when I'm watching a movie, I'm always looking at what's happening and what could happen next, kind of seeing a conclusion to the movie before we get there. And I always like it when movies can toss me a little bit, do something a little unexpected. Not saying I want it to be totally out of left field, coming in with, asteroids crash down and destroying the earth or anything, but I just usually like where you set all this stuff up and it goes somewhere not where you're expecting, but you still see all the foundation in the story. And this one was definitely like that. I guess I'm not gonna really worry about spoilers, but getting right into the movie, you're focusing on the younger brother and you're looking at his aspect of his lack of a relationship with his dad. And so that's what you're focusing on. So all the events that happen, you're thinking about them in that lens of, oh no, he's missing this, he's going to not be able to do this with his dad. He's not going to be able to do that with his dad. He's not going to be able to do this and that and the other. And it was like, aside from towards the middle to end where some of the events that were happening, I was like, they don't exactly lead as a part of the story. So that's when I started looking outside of that and started seeing maybe it's not as much about the younger brother as it is about the older brother. But at the same time, I still didn't see the ending coming. Even though I had seen a couple reviews, well, not seen, but really read a few headlines and knew a little bit about the movie going into it, I still didn't see where it was going. And I still feel, I grew up, I had both my parents there. I'm also an older brother, so I'm not exactly the younger brother in this scenario, but I still can definitely relate with both characters on a lot of the aspects of their lives and how their personalities are now, and also how it was with them growing up. I think they're just written away where the characters feel very fleshed out and individual, but at the same time they feel relatable, which is somewhere I feel a lot of movies have an issue with, making every man versus actual from someone's real life experience. Because as much as we like our stories to be able to appeal to everybody, at the same time everybody technically has their own individual point of view that is different than everyone else's, even if they went through the same things. So having a story that was able to really capture both the writers and whoever's specific experiences, but also made it where it applied to someone who didn't even go through anything like that. And I'm sitting here still feeling the emotion of it and the sadness of it. I just have to say it's well done. I guess I could briefly touch on other filmmaking aspects, but none of it stood out to me too much, which I think is a good thing in this sense, because it's really about this emotional journey for our main characters. And I mean, I enjoyed a lot of other aspects, you know, some of the editing and music and color grading, whatever else there is to it. But that wasn't really the focus of this at all. The only thing that did catch me a little bit, which I still appreciated it, but it did make me realize I was watching a movie for a few moments, was the humor, which I thought was good humor, but there was definitely a few scenes in which characters were doing stuff and saying stuff, and the way the camera's focusing on what someone says, but the camera's on someone, but the focus will shift back to someone in the background or forward or whatever. Someone does something that's just kind of goofy or kind of funny. Like, it's not too sophisticated, I guess, of a sense of humor. And I definitely thought it was funny in most of those situations. You know, if someone says something dramatic, someone echoes them in a comedic way. Someone says something funny, someone else overreacts it in a serious way behind them. You know, that kind of back and forth. It's funny in my opinion. However, I will say it was a few times where I was actively aware, oh, this is a movie. You know, a lot of other scenes, a lot of stuff happening. I can barely tell you what the cinematography was like in a lot of these sequences because I was so engrossed in their characters, their journeys. And speaking of which, I have to say they all did a good job with the voice acting. I know it has Holland, it has Pratt, it has a few other people. They all did a good job in there. Perhaps, since I don't have as much critically to say about this movie, I think I'll just really say one thing more on what they did well with the writing, which was they did a very good job of, in the very beginning of the movie, they're setting up a lot of stuff, setting up our characters, but at the same time, they're setting up the story that's going to happen, and they're setting up events so that you can see them differently when you move into the future, which is typically what you'd want to do in most movies. You want to have stuff that introduce you to your characters while also introducing the themes, while introducing what could happen later on as these change. I feel like a lot of movies don't do this as well, and then you have a lot of exposition for sometimes filling in too much information, or other times you don't get any exposition, stuff happens too quickly. Often what I feel the issue is you don't actually understand where your characters are at the beginning. So when you see stuff changing to them, you can sometimes feel like you get to the end of the movie and you're like, well, we just learned more about this character, you know? We learned more about them, and so we see where they're at the end and we're like, oh, this is how they were all along, because we didn't know where they were. You know, we didn't see how they changed, you know what I'm saying? So I think this movie, like, just to give like an example right off the beginning, there's like a scene where you have Barley, the older brother, and he immediately gets his younger brother like a chokehold, and he's all like, you know, throw me. He's saying a whole lot and he's making a big deal, but his brother kind of like, instead he tears sweater, there's a whole scene and that eases off. But then his older brother immediately grabs his mom in that chokehold, and his mom flips him, and then he's like, yes, that's what I was expecting. So, and immediately this establishes a lot about these three characters. Like, you have the younger brother who is not putting up a fight, he's scared, he's like, get me out of these situations, he's embarrassed by his older brother. There's a whole lot in that moment. And then you have the older brother who's pushing, and in a way you could come across and say, well, that's just him being too cruel, too rough, too loud, too obnoxious, which is what they kind of wanted you to feel in the beginning. But instead, that's really him. I mean, that's how he's going to be in the end, but it's him trying to encourage his younger brother to be stronger than he is. And then he puts his mom up to that same test, which immediately says a lot about their family dynamics, but also says a lot about his mom when his mom does the flip, right? And he's like, there's a warrior, I knew it. And, you know, it shows that encouraging thing he had all along. But at the same time, while you're watching it, you can be just like the younger brother and feel like, why is like his brother's like putting his whole family in chokeholds? What's this all about? So I don't know. It was like a very good moment to set up the character and who these characters were and what they acted like in the beginning. And, you know, later on, you know, he's able to flip his brother at the end. You know, it's kind of like all right, you know, it's set up and he's able to accomplish it. But at the same time, it said a lot about those characters and about their dynamics and interactions right off the bat. So you're not too surprised when you see his mom start doing some heroic stuff, because you know she's exercising, and you saw her actually flip someone when she needed to, you know. And then the older brother, you know, his issues and stuff, they're a lot slower bringing those up. Other than the fact that obviously from you watching it, you feel a little bit like it's a little harsh, maybe. But you know, you kind of view him a certain way, and then as the story goes on, you reveal more to twist it around that. But that's one of the things that's so interesting. The younger brother, we get so much from him right off the bat, but that's because we feel like he's the main character. Anyway, there's a lot I could say. I could just start rambling a little bit on it, but I really enjoyed this movie, and I think I will give it a 4 out of 5. I know technically I didn't really have any issues, so I could give it a 5 out of 5. I just think the main thing is it got me a little too sad towards the end, so I definitely cannot rewatch it too often. Give me at least an hour to pull myself together afterwards. But yeah, my name's Sense, and that's my review of Onward.